My bank balance hit zero. My son Adrian was in Rome, smiling beside his wife Savannah and her mother Celeste, on my life savings. I didn't cry. I smiled, and 3 days later he called me, sobbing. "Mom, what did you do?" I was folding a clean dish towel when the notification lit up my phone like a siren at midnight. Available balance, dollars. I read it once, twice, a third time as if the numbers might shift out of mercy. They didn't. The house fell silent around me, just the kitchen clock, a tired bulb buzzing, and somewhere outside, an ice cream truck wailing through a neighborhood that didn't know my world had just fallen through the floor. I called the bank. A robot greeted me. Then a woman with a careful voice and a script. "Large online wire transfers, Miss Cole. Multiple, totaling $80,000. "My money," I said, and my throat scraped like gravel. "Where did it go?" "Recipient, Adrian Cole." My son's name sat there between us, clinical, cold, printed into a system that doesn't care who carried who through the night. "Would you like to file a fraud report, ma'am?" I hung up. The landline rang right after. I keep it out of habit, the way I keep my faith. "Miriam, it's Hattie from next door." "Honey, did you see Adrian's Instagram?" Hattie's voice was a shaken soda, sweet and fizzing. "They're in Rome. Lord, the food, the suits, him, Savannah, and that mother of hers, Celeste. They look like movie stars." I didn't answer. I opened the drawer where I keep my old phone, charged it, and found my son's page. There he was, my only child, my good boy who grew up on my hands and my prayers. White shirt, gold glass, Colosseum behind him. Savannah glued to his side, Celeste lifting her chin like the whole world belonged to her. The caption, "Rome, my new beginning, I deserve this." And beneath it, from Savannah, "Thanks for everything, Mama-in-law." With a money bag emoji. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone. I held it like a hot brick and felt something inside me settle, like a bone finally snapping back into its rightful place. The kind of smile that found my face wasn't joy. It was clarity. The kind you earn late and wear like steel. On the shelf across from me are the photos that built my life. Adrian, toothless and sticky with popsicle. Adrian, too tall for his first suit. Adrian at graduation, the day I wore shoes that blistered both heels and still walked like a queen. I sold my Georgia patch to pay his tuition. I sold my engagement ring for his senior year. I cleaned kitchens in Brentwood in the mornings, bathrooms in Beverly Hills at night, and made it home in time to pack his lunch and iron his shirt. The world taught me to be small. That boy taught me to stand tall. A week ago, I took a tray of fried chicken and collard greens to his place in Studio City. "Miss Cole," the doorman told me, gentle like I might break. "They asked me not to let you up without notice." I sat on a sun-hot bench for 2 hours holding that warm tray like a promise I wasn't allowed to keep. Then I walked home. I didn't take the bus. I let the city wash my face with heat and grit until the sting behind my eyes cooled to stone. When I set the chicken on my counter that night, Hattie came by with pie. "You've always been strong, Miriam," she said. "Boys come around, you'll see." I wanted to believe her. Instead, I went to the bedroom, pulled the shoebox from beneath my bed, and opened the notebook that holds my recipes and the parts of me I never showed anybody. I wrote one line, careful and neat. "My son didn't die today, but the mother inside me did." The next morning, I carried that notebook down Avalon, turned on 43rd, and buzzed Ray Delgado. First boy I ever loved. Now a grayer man with a desk full of law books and old loyalty. I didn't tell him the whole story. I didn't have to. Men like Ray read the spaces between a woman's words. "Ray," I said, placing a thin stack of bank printouts on his desk. "Tell me if these hands I fed the world with signed anything I don't remember." He read in silence, jaw hardening by degrees. "Joint account authorization, and this," he tapped a page with my name scrawled on it like a stranger trying on my clothes. "This isn't your signature, Miriam." I watched the window. A bus rumbled by, kids laughing in the back, summer running loud in their throats. "How bad is it?" 6 months of steady skimming. And something else. He slid a folded paper across the wood. "A draft will, leaving your house and savings to Adrian upon natural cause." Sloppy copy. But if there's a draft, there could be a filing. He met my eyes. "Do you want to press charges?" I thought of Savannah's caption, of Celeste's high-boned smirk, of my boy raising a glass over my bones. "I want the truth in writing," I said. "And I want my name back where it belongs, on what I bled for." Ray nodded once, the kind of nod men give right before they lift something heavy. Then we start here. Elder financial abuse, request an emergency account freeze, and flag any attempt to move funds across borders. I know a guy at IRSCI, Agent Whitaker. We'll file the packet today. I left Ray's office with the sun sitting hot on my scalp and the traffic buzzing like an angry hive. I stopped at the clinic on Vermont for my blood work. The tests I'd been putting off because life doesn't hand poor women calendars, it hands them alarms and says run. Dr. Patel's office was cool and quiet. His eyes were kind, and kind eyes always mean bad news. He said leukemia, he said advanced, he said months. I listened to every word, as calm as a lake that knows how to hold a storm. Will treatment save me? I asked. It might not. It will take your strength. He paused. It will take your time. Then no, I said. I worked too long to die in a gown. I walked home under a sky that looked the lid of a pot about to boil. In my kitchen, I put the kettle on. The blue ring of flame looked like the edge of heaven. I pulled my red notebook from the shoebox and wrote a second line beneath the first. This isn't revenge. This is justice. Justice lets me die in peace. That night, I slept for 8 hours straight. Across the ocean, Adrian raised his glass to the Roman sky, pretending the taste in his mouth was triumph and not the first metal bite of shame. Savannah laughed, Celeste posed, and the camera caught the beginning of the end. 3 days later my phone rang, a number I knew by heart since the day my hands were steady enough to dial it for him. "Mom," he said, and his voice was a boy's again, scraped and small. "Mom, what did you do?" I wiped my hands on that clean dish towel and let my smile sit where he couldn't see it. "Baby," I said, soft as Sunday, "I just stopped what you were taking." Part 2. The silence before the storm. The next morning, Miriam woke before sunrise. Not because she had anywhere to go, but because old habits die the hardest. She'd been waking up before dawn since she was 14. That's what happens when you grow up needing to clean other people's kitchens before they wake to use them. The kettle hissed, and the sound filled the small house on Avalon Avenue, echoing like a song of routine, something that still belonged to her. She poured herself a cup of coffee, black and bitter. The first sip burned her tongue, and for the first time in her life, she didn't flinch. Pain was no longer something to avoid. It was proof she was still alive. On the wall hung a small wooden cross and a photograph of Adrian as a child, missing a front tooth, holding a paper star he'd made in kindergarten. She stared at it for a long moment. "You were all I ever wanted," she whispered. Then she opened the red notebook, her new one, and began to write. Day 1, after the fire. I have 6 months, maybe less. But that's enough time, enough to clean my name, enough to make him see what he's done. Later that day, Miriam went back to Ray Delgado's office. He was waiting, 2 cups of coffee on his desk, one black, one with milk. He remembered how she used to drink it 40 years ago. She smiled faintly. "Ray," she said, sitting down, "I don't want revenge, I want order." He nodded. "I know you do, that's why it'll work." They went over the documents again. The fake signatures, the forged will draft, the financial transfers. Ray explained how elder financial abuse cases often went unnoticed because victims were too ashamed to speak. "They call it family mismanagement," he said bitterly. "I call it legalized theft." "I worked my whole life to give him a name that wasn't dirty," Miriam said. "Now he used it to steal from me." Ray slid a folder across the desk. Inside were forms, official and cold. "We'll start here. It'll take time." "I don't have time," she replied, "but I have silence, and silence can move mountains if you use it right." In the weeks that followed, Miriam began to move carefully. Every morning she cleaned her small house, not because it needed it, but because she needed purpose. Then she'd walk to Carol Nguyen's place, 2 blocks down. Carol had been an accountant before she retired, a sharp Vietnamese woman who wore glasses too big for her face and a heart too big for her body. Carol taught Miriam how to navigate the bank's digital portal. "You click here," she'd say, tapping the mouse, "then see transactions. All these are withdrawals. You didn't make any of them, right?" Miriam shook her head. "No, I don't even own a laptop." Carol adjusted her glasses. "Then someone's been using your access. Probably your son. He knows your info, yes?" Miriam hesitated. "He helped me set it up." "Then he also helped himself," Carol said simply. "We'll print it all. Every transaction, every date, every dollar. They wrote them down by hand. Miriam's handwriting shook, but her mind was razor sharp. She started labeling each withdrawal with a color code. Blue for bank, red for Adrian, black for unknown. At night, she copied everything into her red notebook. The entries read like confessions. June 2nd, $3,000. He told me it was for insurance paperwork. June 19th, $2,500. He said he'd fix the car. July 7, $80,000. No reason given. She didn't cry anymore. The tears had dried up the moment she saw that Instagram post. Now, every written line was a step toward freedom or closure. Maybe both. One evening, Ray called. "I found something," he said. She could hear the rustle of papers through the phone. "They didn't just move your money," he continued. "They tried to re-register your house deed last year. Joint ownership. If the county office hadn't flagged the signature mismatch, you would have lost the property." Miriam gripped the edge of her kitchen counter. "He tried to take my home. Where they pushed him to. I know your boy. He wasn't born greedy. He's just blind." Miriam's voice softened. "Blindness doesn't excuse theft, Ray." Ray sighed. "No, it doesn't, but it explains the wound. Sometimes love makes people stupid." "Then I must have loved him too much," she said, "because I was the biggest fool of all." A few days later, Dr. Patel called her back in. His office smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant. He spoke gently, the way doctors speak to people they don't expect to see again in a year. "The tests confirm it, Miriam. It's leukemia, stage 4. She nodded slowly. "How long?" 6 months, maybe less without treatment. "And with?" He hesitated. "You might get a year, but you'll be weak. Hospital beds, tubes, it won't be life, it'll be waiting." Miriam looked out the window. The city moved as it always had, people rushing to jobs that didn't love them, buses sighing at red lights, mothers holding children by the hand. "I've waited all my life, doctor," she said. "I think I've waited enough." He wanted to insist, but the look in her eyes stopped him. It wasn't denial. It was resolve. Before she left, he asked softly, "Is there someone you want to call? Family?" She smiled faintly. "I had one. He's in Rome." That night, Miriam stood in front of her bathroom mirror. She tied her hair back, grabbed a pair of old sewing scissors, and began to cut. Strands fell like dark snow into the sink. When she finished, her reflection looked back, older, harder, freer. "For once," she whispered, "I look exactly like how I feel." She took a piece of chalk and wrote on her bathroom mirror, "No one destroys me twice." Then she packed a small bag, locked her door, and walked down to the bus stop with the red notebook under her arm. Her destination, downtown Los Angeles. Her mission, file the official complaint. At the County Elder Protection Office, the clerk barely looked up. "Ma'am, we need documentation." She placed the forged will, the transaction list, and her ID on the counter. "You'll have it." The woman blinked. "This is a lot. You understand it's your son?" "I understand it's a criminal," Miriam replied. By the time she left, the sun was high and hot, but she felt light, lighter than she had in months. Meanwhile, in Rome, Adrian was unraveling. The first cracks began with Savannah's silence. She no longer laughed at his jokes, no longer kissed him before dinner. She spent most of her nights scrolling through her phone, smiling at messages she didn't show him. One evening, as he stepped out of the shower, he heard her voice on the balcony. "Yes," she whispered. "We'll be done soon. He's clueless. The money's safe. Spain next week." A pause. A laugh. "He really thinks I love him." The water still dripped from his hair, freezing down his back. He didn't say a word. He walked back to bed and lay beside her, his heart a hollow drum. He stared at the ceiling all night, remembering his mother's voice. "Hold on, baby. We'll have it tomorrow." But tomorrow had finally come, and it was empty. Back in Los Angeles, Miriam met Ray and Carol again. They sat around Carol's kitchen table, papers spread everywhere like a puzzle only faith could solve. "I filed the complaint," Miriam said. Ray nodded. "Good. Whitaker's pushing the freeze through the IRS channel. Once it's logged, any foreign transaction linked to your name or Adrian's will be blocked." "Will he know?" Carol asked. Ray smirked. "Oh, he'll know. His card will decline in the middle of dinner." Miriam didn't smile. "That's not the part I'm waiting for. I want the moment he looks around and realizes he's alone." Ray's gaze softened. "You're not doing this out of hate." "No," she said quietly, "out of love, but the kind that teaches." For days, Miriam waited. She lived her routine, cooking small meals, writing short entries in the red notebook. She didn't mark the calendar anymore. Instead, she counted silence. How long since she'd last thought of forgiving him? How long since she'd felt fear? She still walked to Hattie's house sometimes. They'd sit on the porch talking about weather, not pain. "You look different," Hattie said once. "Peaceful." Miriam chuckled. "Peace isn't the same as happy. You're planning something." "I'm finishing something." That night, she opened her notebook again and wrote, "Justice doesn't scream, it waits, and when it comes it doesn't knock, it walks right in." Across the Atlantic, Adrian's life began to fold in on itself. At dinner in a luxury restaurant near Piazza Navona, his card was declined. Once, twice, 3 times. Savannah rolled her eyes. "Seriously, Adrian?" "There must be some mistake," he said, forcing a laugh. "It's the same card." She tried hers, declined. Then Celeste's. Same result. The waiter's polite smile turned tight. "Would you like to call your bank, sir?" Adrian's palms went cold. "Yes," he stammered, dialing. The line clicked. A monotone voice answered. "This account has been temporarily frozen due to suspicious activity. Please contact the Financial Abuse Investigation Department." He hung up. Savannah's eyes flashed like knives. "What did you do?" "I didn't," he began, but she cut him off. "You stupid fool. This is your fault, you and that pitiful mother of yours." "Don't talk about her like that," he snapped, voice rising. Celeste leaned in, venomous calm in her tone. "She's probably dead by now, darling. Get over it." He didn't answer. He just stood up and walked out, leaving them both behind, still arguing over who to blame. Back home, Miriam was peeling an apple when the phone rang. The old landline, the one that only ever brought bad news. She lifted the receiver. "Mom," a voice cracked through the static. "Mom, what did you do? They froze everything. I can't access a single dollar. Savannah's gone. Celeste too. They left me." Miriam took a slow breath. "I didn't take anything from you, son. I just stopped what you were taking from me." He was crying now. "They say I could be arrested. You said you'd always be there for me." "I was," she said softly, "until you stopped being there for yourself. Please help me, Mom. I don't know what to do." "Then learn." And she hung up. That night, Miriam didn't sleep out of worry. She didn't need to. She sat at her small kitchen table, the red notebook open before her, the ink fresh and shining under the lamplight. She wrote, "He called. The lesson began. Sometimes love must hurt to be understood. Tomorrow I will see Ray. The law moves slowly, but justice already runs." She closed the notebook, turned off the light, and for the first time in 40 years, Miriam Cole, mother, worker, survivor, went to bed without praying for her son. The prayer had been answered in a different way. The silence had done its work. The days after Adrian's call passed like whispers through Miriam's small house. The world outside still turned. Buses groaned down Avalon Avenue, neighbors watered lawns, kids chased ice cream trucks. But inside, time slowed to something gentle. Miriam spent her mornings watching light crawl up the kitchen wall, golden at first, then white and merciless. She no longer counted the days she had left. She only counted the quiet ones, the ones that didn't ache. Her red notebook sat open on the table. The last line read, "Sometimes love must hurt to be understood." She traced those words with her finger until the ink smudged slightly, then closed the book. That afternoon she put on her best blouse, the blue one with small white flowers, and took the bus to Ray's office downtown. He looked up as she entered, concern flickering in his eyes. "You look tired," he said softly. She smiled. "I'm dying, Ray. I should look the part." He flinched, but she didn't let him speak. "How's the case?" He exhaled. "The freeze is holding. The authorities traced the transfers, IRS, Interpol, all of it. Savannah and Celeste are under investigation for fraud, tax evasion, and falsifying documents. They used your son as the front, but the evidence points mostly to them. And Adrian? He's not charged yet, but he's broke and alone. His passport's flagged. He can't leave Italy until the inquiry's done." Miriam nodded. "Good. Let him stay there a while. Maybe he'll find God among the ruins." Ray leaned back, studying her. "You sure this is enough?" She looked out the window, the city glittering in the afternoon heat like a mirage. "It's not about enough. It's about done." That evening, Miriam walked home slower than usual. Her legs trembled halfway down Avalon, and she had to stop twice to catch her breath. The second time, a young woman approached, a stranger with kind eyes and a grocery bag. "You okay, ma'am?" Miriam smiled faintly. "Just old. Don't mind me." The girl hesitated. "You need a ride?" "No, baby." The walk's the only thing keeping me from turning into dust." They both laughed softly before parting ways. When Miriam reached her porch, the light was turning amber. That sweet hour between noise and night. She sat down on the step, the red notebook on her lap, and began to write again. August 12th. The world doesn't end with thunder. It ends with sighs. Today, I realized peace is just pain that finally gave up screaming. She paused, pen hovering. Her hands looked thinner now, skin like paper, veins blue as rivers on a map. She wrote one more line. "When I'm gone, let him find this. Let him know I forgave him before he asked." Across the ocean, Adrian sat on the edge of a cheap hotel bed in Rome, staring at a phone screen full of silence. Savannah had blocked him. Celeste was gone, too. Vanished with whatever cash they hadn't spent on champagne and handbags. He'd sold his watch that morning for a one-way ticket back to Los Angeles, but the airline declined his card. Everywhere he turned, his mother's name shadowed his. Frozen accounts, flagged transfers, whispered warnings. It wasn't anger that ate him anymore. It was the echo of her last words. "Then learn." He called the number again. It rang 4 times before the voicemail picked up. "Mom," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I was stupid. I thought money meant freedom, but I see now, it just buys the cage." He didn't hang up. He just sat there crying into a phone line that didn't answer. 2 weeks later, Ray stopped by Miriam's house with a manila envelope under his arm. "Final paperwork," he said. "Your name's back on everything. The case is officially closed." Miriam poured him sweet tea and handed him a slice of cornbread. "You always were the closer," she teased. Ray didn't smile. "You've lost weight." "I've lost more than that," she said, sipping her tea, "but I gained something back too." He studied her face, the calmness there, like someone who'd already crossed a river and left her shoes on the other side. "You're ready, aren't you?" he said quietly. She nodded. "I've been ready a long time. I just didn't know for what." When he left, she opened the envelope. Her name, Miriam Cole, printed clean and proud on the deed to her home. Her hands trembled as she folded the paper and placed it inside her red notebook. That night, she lit a single candle on the kitchen counter and opened her window to the street. The sound of crickets filled the warm air. Somewhere down the block, Hattie's radio played an old Sam Cooke song. Miriam hummed along, her voice thin but steady. The next morning, a knock came at the door. 3 soft taps, the kind that carried hesitation. When she opened it, the world tilted. "Mom?" Adrian stood there, thinner, paler, his eyes swollen from sleeplessness. He clutched a small suitcase, and shame. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Miriam stepped aside. "You look hungry," he nodded, eyes brimming. "I haven't eaten since Madrid." "Then sit down," she said, her tone even, almost gentle. "We'll fix that first." She warmed leftover stew and set the bowl before him. He ate quietly, spoon trembling in his hand. "I thought you'd slam the door," he said finally. "I thought so too," she replied, "but the door's older than both of us. It's seen worse." He swallowed. "Mom, don't say sorry," she interrupted softly. "Not yet. Let me have one meal where I don't have to hear excuses." He nodded, tears spilling anyway. When he finished eating, she handed him a folded towel. "You'll sleep on the couch. Sheets are clean." He looked around the small house, the faded curtains, the framed photos, the smell of lemon cleaner. Everything he'd once thought beneath him now felt like sanctuary. That night, Miriam couldn't sleep. She sat by her window, watching the streetlight flicker. Adrian stirred on the couch, murmuring in his sleep. Something about Rome, something about loss. She whispered to the night, "Let him dream it all away." Morning came slow and quiet. Miriam woke to the sound of dishes clinking. She walked into the kitchen and froze. Adrian was washing plates, carefully, methodically, just like she used to teach him when he was 10. He turned, startled. "Morning," she smiled faintly. "Didn't think you remembered how." He shrugged. "Guess some lessons stick." They sat together over coffee, his with sugar, hers black. Finally, he spoke. "They're gone, Mom. Savannah and her mother took what little I had left." Miriam nodded. "I know." He looked up, confused. "You knew?" "Ray told me. I let them. Some things you have to lose before you see what's worth keeping." He rubbed his face. "I don't deserve this. You should hate me." "I did," she said simply, "but hate's heavy. I've carried enough." He bowed his head. "I don't know how to fix it." She reached across the table, laid her hand on his. "Then don't fix it. Live better. That's how you repay the dead." He looked up sharply. "Don't say that." She smiled softly. It's true. The doctor said 6 months. That was 2 months ago. His eyes widened. Mom, don't cry, she said. I've had enough tears in this house to last generations. They sat there until the sun filled the kitchen, washing everything in gold. Over the next few weeks, Adrian stayed. He mowed the small yard, repaired the back fence, fixed the old record player that hadn't worked in years. Every evening, they sat on the porch, here in the rocker, him on the steps, listening to the world fade into dusk. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't. Silence was their new language. One evening, he brought her a small box. Inside was her engagement ring, the one she'd sold for his tuition. I found it in a pawn shop near Melrose, he said quietly. Cost me my last few dollars. She smiled faintly. You bought back a memory. That's worth more than gold. Later that night, she wrote her final entry in the red notebook. He came home. Not the man I raised, the boy I lost. I don't need apologies. I just need this porch, this sunset, this breath. If tomorrow doesn't come, today was enough. A week later, Ray stopped by to check in. He found Adrian sitting on the porch, staring at the horizon. She went peacefully, Adrian said quietly. Last night, she asked for tea, then told me to let the kettle sing. By the time it did, she was gone. Ray took off his hat, eyes glistening. She deserved peace. Adrian nodded. She found it. He handed Ray the red notebook. She wanted you to have this first. Ray opened the cover. Inside, on the final page, written in her delicate script, were just 2 words. We're even. 6 months later, Adrian stood at her grave. A simple stone under a jacaranda tree, purple petals scattered like blessings. He'd gotten a job at a small community center downtown, teaching kids how to budget, how to trust, how to start over. He still carried her notebook everywhere he went. Sometimes he'd read her lines aloud to the class. Justice doesn't scream, it waits. Peace isn't the same as happy. Love must hurt to be understood. The kids would listen, wide-eyed, not realizing they were hearing the story of a mother who died teaching her son how to live. And on quiet nights, when the jacaranda trees outside the center bloomed, Adrian would look up at the sky and whisper, Mom, I learned. The wind would stir, soft and forgiving, and somewhere he swore he could hear her voice. Then that's enough, baby. That's enough. The jacaranda trees had turned gold that fall, their petals covering the small graveyard in a soft carpet that smelled of earth and memory. Adrian came every Sunday. Not out of guilt anymore, but out of rhythm, the same rhythm his mother had lived by. He always brought 2 things, a cup of black coffee and her red notebook. The pages were worn now, corners curled from too much reading. He'd underlined her words in blue ink, his way of talking back to her. Today, he sat cross-legged on the grass, wind-brushing his hair. He opened to the page that said, We're even. He smiled faintly. You were wrong about that, Mom, he whispered. You gave more than I can ever return. Behind him, children laughed. The small playground at the community center, the one he'd helped build, was alive with noise. A girl named Rosie, no older than 7, ran up to him holding a coin jar. Mr. Cole, we filled it for the food drive. Adrian grinned. You did? That's incredible. Rosie beamed. You said every dollar counts, so I told my grandma to stop buying lottery tickets. He laughed, heart swelling. Smartest investment I've heard all week. When Rosie ran back to her friends, Adrian looked at the jar and thought of all the nights his mother had gone without dinner so he could eat. He whispered, Guess we're finally giving back, huh? That evening, he locked up the center, turned off the lights, and lingered by the doorway. The walls were lined with framed photos, the after-school program, the volunteers, a faded picture of Miriam sitting on her porch, smiling into the distance. He'd hung it there on purpose. Every child who came through would know who started it all, even if they never knew her name. He stepped outside. The Los Angeles dusk was painted in bruised pinks and golds. As he walked toward Avalon Avenue, the smell of fried chicken drifted from a nearby diner, the kind his mother used to make. He almost turned in, but stopped. He wasn't hungry. He just missed the sound of her humming in the kitchen. He took out his phone and scrolled to his notes app, where he'd copied her red notebook word for word. He read one line aloud to the empty street. Peace isn't the same as happy. Then he added his own beneath it. But sometimes peace leads the way there. Weeks later, a letter arrived, postmarked from Rome. Inside was a thin envelope with a small Polaroid photo, Savannah and Celeste in handcuffs, escorted by police at Fiumicino Airport. A note attached, case closed, justice served, RD. Adrian stared at it for a long time, then tore it gently in half. He didn't smile, he didn't gloat, he just whispered, "Mom already did that." He folded the pieces, placed them in the red notebook, and wrote at the bottom of the page, "Vengeance ends where understanding begins." Months turned into a year. The community center grew. Local sponsors pitched in. They renamed it the Miriam House. A small plaque by the door read, "For every woman who gave her last dollar and still smiled." Adrian taught classes twice a week: budgeting, financial literacy, and something the kids called life math. He told stories, not of Rome or riches, but of small triumphs. The day his mother saved $5 to buy him shoes, the morning she walked 6 miles in the rain just to drop off his lunch. One afternoon, a teenage boy stayed behind after class. "Mr. Cole," he said hesitantly, "my mom keeps giving my uncle money. He says he'll pay her back, but he never does." Adrian studied him. "And you're angry?" The boy nodded. Adrian thought of his younger self, arrogant, hungry, blind. He took a deep breath. "Then help her. Not by yelling, by showing her what she's worth. Start with her bank account. Make her see her name means something." The boy frowned. "That'll fix it?" "No," Adrian said quietly, "but it'll start the fixing in you." The boy didn't understand then, but one day he would. That night, Adrian sat in his small office, the red notebook open under the lamp. He began adding new pages, his own handwriting beside hers, like a conversation across time. "You taught me silence, Mom. Now I teach others how to listen." He titled the page, "The Cole Principle." It wasn't a law or a motto. It was a promise that poverty wouldn't silence dignity, that forgiveness wasn't weakness, and that love, even when wounded, could rebuild a world. A few months later, the mayor visited the Miriam House to present an award. Cameras flashed, reporters asked questions. "What inspired this center, Mr. Cole?" Adrian looked straight into the lenses. "My mother," he said simply. "She taught me what it means to lose everything and still give." That night, alone after everyone left, he stood before her framed picture. The room smelled faintly of lemon and old wood. "I think I'm finally okay, Mom," he whispered. "You can rest now." For a moment he swore the air shimmered, a breeze that touched the back of his neck like fingers brushing away sweat. He smiled. "Yeah," he murmured. "I feel it too." The next morning, Adrian took the bus to Avalon Avenue. He hadn't been to the house in months. The yard had grown wild, the porch sagged, but the air still carried her. Coffee, soap, sunlight. He walked inside. Dust hung in the air like memory. On the counter sat her old kettle, dented, blackened at the handle. He cleaned it, filled it with water, and set it on the stove. When the whistle came, he closed his eyes. It was the same note that once called him to breakfast, to safety, to home. He poured himself a cup, sat at her kitchen table, and opened the red notebook one last time. Inside, between her lines and his, was a blank page. He smiled. "Guess it's my turn to write." He wrote slowly, carefully. "Her justice became my peace. Her silence became my voice. This isn't the end, it's the echo." He closed the notebook, set it on the counter beside the kettle, and stepped outside into the sunlight. The jacaranda trees were blooming again, this time violet, like bruises that had finally healed. Children laughed somewhere down the block. Adrian tilted his face to the sky and whispered, "Mom, I'm still learning." And in the rustle of the trees, in the hum of the street, he heard her answer, soft as a lullaby. "Then keep going, baby. That's what living means." He smiled through tears, breathing in the morning light. The house behind him glowed in silence, not lonely, not haunted, just home again. 15 years had passed since the jacaranda trees rained purple over Miriam Cole's grave. Time had been both kind and cruel to Adrian. Kind, because it let him rebuild a life with purpose. Cruel, because it made him watch it fade again, this time not through loss, but through age. The lines around his eyes were deep now. His hair was silver, his steps slower, but his hands, those same hands that once signed away $80,000, had become steady again. He used them to build things, mend toys, write letters to kids who never met his mother but lived through her legacy. The Miriam house had grown into a foundation. branches across Los Angeles, Oakland, Atlanta. Each center taught not just math or budgeting, but the one thing that had saved him: accountability born from love. That morning, Adrian sat in his office, sunlight spilling through the blinds. On the wall behind him hung the same red notebook, framed, open to the page that read, "Justice doesn't scream, it waits." He smiled at it like one might smile at a ghost who stayed because she knew she was still needed. A knock came at the door. "Mr. Cole?" He looked up to see a girl standing nervously in the doorway, no older than 20, clutching a folder to her chest. Her name tag read, "Dean Nguyen, intern." "Come in, sweetheart," Adrian said. "What's on your mind?" She stepped forward. "Sir, I'm supposed to catalog the archives. I found this in the old storage box." She handed him an envelope, yellowed, sealed, his name written across it in looping cursive. He froze. That handwriting, that calm, deliberate curve of the M. It was hers. He opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a single sheet of paper, thin, almost translucent. "Adrian, if you're reading this, it means you've lived long enough to understand why I smiled that day you called me crying. I didn't do it to hurt you. I did it to wake you. The world doesn't need perfect men, baby. It needs men who've fallen and still found their way home. When you forgive yourself, you forgive me too, Mom." Adrian's breath caught in his throat. He reread it until the ink blurred through tears he didn't even feel falling. The intern watched, silent. "Was that from your mother?" He nodded. "Yeah, she was the storm. I'm just the echo." The girl smiled softly. She'd be proud. "She already was," he whispered. That evening, he locked up the office later than usual. Outside, the city glowed like spilled honey, slow, golden, alive. He took the long route home, past the murals and streetlights, until he reached Avalon Avenue. The old house still stood. Someone had painted it a lighter color now, but the bones were the same. He walked up to the porch, his mother's porch, and sat down where she once did, letting the boards creak under his weight. He pulled from his pocket a small notebook, blue this time, and began to write. October 3rd, 15 years since she left. The world still spins the same way, only I'm slower now. But that's okay. I've learned speed never meant progress. He closed the book and looked up at the sky. The stars were out, faint, scattered, half swallowed by city haze, but one shone brighter, right above the roofline. He chuckled softly. "You still watching me, huh?" A breeze stirred the jacaranda branches, and for just a second he could smell coffee. Black. Bitter. Hers. A week later, Adrian didn't come into work. When the staff went to check on him, they found him in his chair by the window, peaceful, notebook in hand, pen still resting on the last line he ever wrote. "Forgiveness is the only inheritance worth leaving." On the desk beside him was a sealed envelope addressed to Dean Nguyen. Inside, a letter. "You remind me of her. Quiet but strong. Keep the house open. Keep the porch lights on. Somewhere out there, another boy is about to make the same mistakes I did. Make sure he finds his way home. AC." Years later, the Miriam House Foundation hosted its 20th anniversary. The halls were filled with photos. Miriam with her dish towel, Adrian with his ledger, children smiling in every corner. At the entrance stood a new plaque, unveiled by Dean Nguyen, now director of the foundation. It read, "The Cole Legacy." Miriam taught justice. Adrian taught peace. We teach love that lasts. As the crowd applauded, a gust of wind rustled the jacaranda branches outside. Purple petals drifted through the open doors, settling at the base of the plaque like blessings from another world. Dean Nguyen looked up and smiled. "They're both here," she whispered. And somewhere beyond the ceiling lights and speeches, the air shimmered. Just enough for two souls, long at peace to hear her. Miriam's voice. "You kept the light on, baby." Adrian's. "Always, Mom." The petals danced one last time before the wind carried them upward, toward the stars, toward home. The morning sun spilled across Los Angeles like liquid gold, turning every rooftop into a quiet prayer. Inside the Miriam House Foundation, the air smelled of coffee, fresh paper, and lavender. Miriam's favorite scent, kept alive by a small candle near the entrance. Dean Nguyen stood before the old photograph wall, black and white faces fading into sepia warmth. There was Miriam, holding a dish towel, smile soft but unbroken. Next to her, Adrian, standing on the same porch, sunlight on his hair. Underneath the photo, a plaque read, "Forgiveness is the only inheritance worth leaving. AC." She touched the words gently. Every time her fingers met the brass, it hummed, not a sound, but a memory. That day marked the 40th anniversary of the Miriam House. Reporters had gathered, students from every branch were visiting, and the hall buzzed with stories. Stories of women saved from eviction, boys who finished college, families who started small businesses because someone here taught them to believe they could. As the crowd settled, Dee stepped to the podium. Her voice was calm, her smile measured, the same way Miriam might have spoken to a nervous neighbor, or Adrian to a scared kid holding overdue bills. 40 years ago, she began, a woman named Miriam Cole lost everything. Her savings, her health, even her faith in the son she loved most. But instead of letting the world make her bitter, she made it better. She paused, scanning the crowd, and her son, Adrian, took the lesson she left him, that silence can heal, that love can teach, and built this house. He taught that justice and compassion aren't opposites, they're twins. A soft murmur rippled through the room. Some people were crying quietly, others smiled through the ache. Dee continued, her voice steady. When I first walked into this building as a scared intern, Mr. Cole told me something I never forgot. He said, "Keep the porch lights on. There's always someone trying to find their way home." She turned slightly toward the old photo wall. Tonight, the light outside stays on. For them, for every Miriam and every Adrian who ever thought love had run out. Applause rose, slow, genuine, like rain beginning on dry soil. Later, after everyone had gone, Dee stayed behind. The night was deep blue, quiet. The porch light glowed softly against the jacaranda tree that had grown taller than the roof. Purple petals drifted across the steps, like small reminders of seasons that never really ended. She sat down on the porch bench, the same one from Miriam's house, restored and kept all these years. In her hands was the blue notebook Adrian had left behind. She opened to the last page. The ink was faded, but the words still pulsed with life. Her justice became my peace. Her silence became my voice. She added a new line beneath it in her own handwriting. Their voices became my light. Then she closed the book and placed it beside her on the step. The night breeze carried the scent of coffee and lemon, faint but real. "Thank you," she whispered, "for building the path I get to walk." Somewhere above, the jacaranda leaves stirred, soft, approving. At dawn, Dee unlocked the doors to the Miriam house. A young boy was already waiting, small, maybe 9, holding his mother's hand. "Hi," Dee said, kneeling to his height. "First time here?" He nodded shyly. His mother smiled nervously. I lost my job. We're trying to figure things out." Dee smiled. "You came to the right place." She led them inside, through the bright hall, past the framed photos, into the small office where sunlight always hit just right. The boy stared at Miriam's picture. "Is that your mom?" Dee shook her head softly. "No, sweetheart, but in a way, she's everyone's mom." The boy nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Kids always know what adults forget. When they left that afternoon, the boy turned back and waved. The wind caught the porch light, making it flicker just once, as if it winked back. That night, alone in her office, Dee looked out the window at the street. The same street where a woman named Miriam once walked home under a sky that looked ready to break. She whispered to herself, "Justice waits, love teaches, and light." Her voice trembled slightly. Light never dies. She closed her eyes and smiled. Outside, the jacaranda tree swayed gently, scattering purple petals across the porch like blessings, as if Miriam and Adrian were still there, watching, still proud. And for the first time in years, Dee felt not like a successor, but a continuation, a heartbeat carried forward.